Why do you think I'm back here, Bayan? And I curse myself for it because it keeps dragging me back here. At the end of the day, one feels a bit like an Israeli. You know why the Israeli agitated for their homeland? Was that there's somewhere you really want to go where you're amongst your own people. My mother's British. I spent a lot of time over there. I qualified at the bar. I have a lot of British friends, but I never really felt that I'm an Englishman. And
Why?
I never pretended.
Why?
I just never felt it. I didn't look like them. I didn't think the same way as them. And so I suddenly realized that a lot of my behavior was inherently Nigerian, a lot of my view of the world. And in many ways, I'm more comfortable here. But then the economic motive sort of keeps you over there. And then you come here, and sometimes life gets very frustrating.
Another text message. What's your view about Mossab and Biafran call in the southeast? That's Uche from Aba.
It's very interesting. You see, it's not just Mossab, is it? We have OPC in the southwest. We have various groups in the south-south that are all arguing for autonomous control of their own particular region. The right of people to self-govern is enshrined in the UN Charter. It's a fundamental part of the modern world that people should have the right to self-determine how they live. Look what's going on in Iraq. The Shiites in the south of Iraq want autonomy. The Sunnis don't because the Shiites have the oil. The Kurds in the north want autonomy because they have the oil. The Sunnis that don't have and they're a minority want federalization. So you understand, it's all over the world. In Basque Land, in Spain, they've been fighting for 30 years for autonomy. So it's all over the world. It's not just Nigeria. But it has become more and more outspoken now. Because when a certain part of the community feels that historically they've been held back or oppressed or haven't been able to achieve their full potential by a very selfish minority group that seem to assume that this country is just theirs to enjoy anyhow, then of course people say, look, we don't want to be a part of them. They've got nothing to do with us. We're not the same culture, ethnic grouping, religion, that we want to look after our own interests.
Another text message. Appio, you just told us you were born in Warri. That means you're a Nigerian by birth. If you are given a political appointment in this country, would you accept that's Amy from Port Harcourt?
No way. I would never accept a political appointment in Nigeria.
Why not?
I believe that there are many, many more qualified Nigerians that are better able to perform any role that I was offered here. I believe that there are many, many Nigerians that have far more right to it than me, that have struggled, that have shed blood for the cause, that have been involved in politics full-time. They wouldn't want to see some Johnny-come-lately like me just coming along and enjoying something that they should have. And if anyone offered me the job, I bet you I could find a better qualified Nigerian than me to do it.
I won't take you up on that. Another text message. Are you an Obasanjo apologist, here to castigate the aspiration of others like IBB and Atiku so that an Obasanjo third term is actualized? Ogunto Ashe from Ibadan.
Well, that's a good question. If I was an Obasanjo apologist, I'm very close to Femi Fani-Kyode. I've known him for 25 years. And I'm sure that by now I would have received something from government by way of appointment or whatever. But I can quite honestly say that I am the South-South. I'm working with a group of South-South politicians. And it may come to the point where we may have to fight Obasanjo. He may want to have, PDP may have other interests to a South-South candidate or whatever. So it's not a question of being a Obasanjo apologist. But what I have to say is this. Nigerians are very critical and they're very impatient. It's almost as if they expected Obasanjo to come here and perform miracles. But as I've said, the damage was caused to this country over such a length of time has taken a long time to resolve itself. And to be quite honest, again, a lot of people, including myself, are very skeptical about General Obasanjo when he first came to power. We felt that he was in the thrall of certain interest groups that were just pushing him there to use like a stooge and get rid of them when they wanted power back. But that's clearly not the case. Look at his administration. We have a woman from the southeast who's a finance minister. Can you imagine that under General Abacha? It's not possible. So he's done an awful lot, and I think that people don't really give him credit. Everyone thinks that it's just so easy to govern this country. So, no, I'm not an apologist, but I'll certainly give credit where credit is due.
Now, having given credit where credit is due, you must be aware of rumblings in certain quarters that suggest that Mr. President wants to run for a third term. You must have had that. What is your take?
It's funny you should say that, Bayo. I picked up this day's newspaper today, and it says, Obasanjo says, I'm going in 18 months. It's today's this day newspaper. The President has consistently said that he's leaving office in 2007. I've got no reason to doubt him. Why should I? After all, he did it before. So as I said, the best indicator of future performance is past performance. However, I will say this. When the matter was mooted to me by a couple of friends of mine, one from Calabar, who's a very radical politician, and one from the Southwest, who's a very radical politician, and they're not, by no means, Obasanjo supporters. In fact, they're not particularly fond of him. When they were voicing these suspicions to me, I put a question to them. I said, well, look, given the circumstances where it was an Obasanjo third term or these two individuals, and the third term was realized by democratic means, i.e. that by referendum or
changing the constitution, which says you can only sit for
whatever it means, as long as it was democratic.
Okay.
Who would you prefer between this candidate and that candidate, or a third term for Obasanjo? And they didn't know what to say. They just started laughing. Said, Peter, you're not being fair to us. I said, well,
what would you say?
It's a hypothetical question, yes, and we haven't reached that issue yet. But I think.
But you raised it.
I raised it,
so you might as well answer it.
I was told that you're a tough man. Well, I will answer, and I'll answer it frankly. I would say that if the only other candidates were clearly inferior to him, and if it could be done in a legal and democratic way, why not? You see, the problem.
So you're in support of a third term?
No.
If, for example, the National Assembly, there were a referendum, and there was a legal backing that said he could contest for a third term,
yes,
then you would say yes.
If all those requirements, number one, I used to be a lawyer, I don't practice much these days, if all the legal requirements were in place, and if there was clearly a manifest popular demand for such a position, and it clearly wasn't manifestly unpopular, and there was no other viable alternative, why not? You see, can I just...
Would you think in a country like Nigeria, I mean, as you have said, with so much human capital, do you think there'll be no viable alternatives, even though we haven't recognized some of them?
Bayo, you and I know Nigeria.
Yes.
It's quite possible for certain money bags to hijack certain political parties, because that's the way it works. And therefore the viable candidates that could come through wouldn't come through. So I'm just saying, in that very hypothetical point of view, from where a situation is where some money bags who've accumulated money from we don't know where hijack certain parties, and are therefore the only candidates for the position, unless it was a continuation of Obasanjo's current administration, and the population was manifestly in favor. Because don't forget that this man has accumulated something like $25 billion in reserves, and with the way oil's going, in another 2 years that could be a lot of money, and some of these people are eyeing that money. So we don't want a problem to come again where someone's just going to come and dissipate and loot these funds. Because let's look at this rationally. You see, when we look at people extending themselves, it's a peculiar African problem. But also Singapore, you had Lee Kuan Yew, you had Mahathir Mohamad in Malaysia. They were there for about 30 years.
But they were thought to be visionary, and they brought dramatic changes to the country.
Exactly. Therefore, if a leader can provide dramatic changes, if he can do it democratically, because Lee Kuan Yew and Mahathir Mohamad did it democratically, then believe you me, you won't have a problem with it.
I'll take some more text messages. The first one, I love you, Mr. Appio.
I love you too.
You're a genius. I almost thought you were a foreigner, but now I know you're a true Nigerian. I love you and I salute your courage, Reverend Gideon.
Reverend Gideon, thank you so much. And God loves us all, so thank you.
Another text message. Do you buy the idea of paying back the remaining debt with external reserves once and for all? Tony from Otta.
I do. I'm not happy with it. I think it's the best situation that we've been able to negotiate. I think it would be unrealistic to expect anything better. But me, I'm a radical. I would have told them I'd be very...
To jump.
Yes. A lot of these debts were completely spurious. Our debt was manipulated by offshore bank and various people here that didn't have the country's interest at heart. And there was a lot of confusion about how much we owed and how it came to it. And a lot of these issues weren't addressed. But I think as a pragmatic, realistic solution, it was the best we could get. You can't take on these financial powers like Britain and America and France and Japan. If they say no, go to hell, then it's the best we could do in the circumstances.